Just loading up. All right, you are all set, and then I can share this. Hold on. All right. Oh, the echo. Perfect. The agenda, I think you should be good.
Great. Thank you, Sabrina. Okay,
Yep.
everyone, welcome to the Planning Committee. I will quickly go through the roll call. I guess seeing that where the agenda is posted, if you just don't mind acknowledging your presence. Ms. Shanahan?
Here.
Ms. Smith?
Here.
Mr. Livingston?
Here.
Mr. Keegan?
Here.
Mr. Sirenides?
Here.
Mrs. Young? No. Okay. And I, Mr. Cuddies, I am also present. Okay. Public participation. Sabrina, has anyone signed up to speak?
There's 2 people in as attendees. If you can use the raise your hand function, if you would like to comment on anything on the agenda. I see there's a phone call listener at 9502, and then there's a Mr. Pat Tomlinson as well. Just raise your hand if you want to speak, and if you're just listening in, then I'll just give you a minute to do the raise your hand, and then if you're not willing to speak and you just want to listen in, we'll just move on.
502 is usually the note taker.
Yeah, I think that's the note taker as well. Just have one other person, which may or may not.
That's a recorder.
Yeah, I thought so. So you're all set. There's nobody else here from the public, John.
Okay, seeing no one has signed up for public participation, I will now close that and then move on to a little committee business, and that is the approval of the minutes of November 5th, 2020 meeting. Would someone like to move that? Thank you, Mr. Livingston. I will now call, I guess I'll do a roll call on this as well. All in favor? Ms. Shanahan?
Yes.
Smith?
Yeah.
Mr. Livingston?
Yes.
Mr. Keegan?
Yes.
Mr. Sirenides? Mr. Sirenides? Georgie?
Hey guys, I'm breaking up, but I'm a yes.
Okay, and I am
Yes.
also a yes. Okay, the minutes pass unanimously. All right, now moving on to new business. So I thought this would be a good opportunity. It was a quiet month to kind of get an update on what we've done in recent history. It seems like a while ago, I know, with COVID and everything, but thought we use this meeting to kind of go get an update on everything that's been going on. So I believe Steve, Mr. Kleppen, you've joined us and plan to give us an update for items 2A, and that's 2A 1, 2, and 3. We're ready whenever you are. Steve, you there? You out there chopping down Christmas trees?
Steve, we can't hear you. I don't know why your mic's not working. You're unmuted, but we can't hear you. Maybe you want to try calling in to the number.
With the first item being the industrial zone study progress report and update. I can't even see him. Hold on. Is he? Can we see him at least?
Yeah, we can see him, but his audio isn't the greatest. Well, it's highlighting now. Try to speak, Steve. I think it's working.
How's that? Can you hear me?
All good.
Okay. I'm not sure what was going on. Sorry about that.
There we go.
So I had sent an email a couple days back, just kind of giving an update on, I guess, just general things going on in the planning and zoning world at the moment. The link to the map that I sent gives a pretty good guide of some of the projects that have been approved recently. As I said, there's a few of the projects that probably could come off of that list, but those are like recently approved projects and/or projects under construction. And it gives them basic information related to those projects, like the the size, if there's how many residential units, overall square footage when it was approved, and those kind of details, just for point of fact, that something accessible to the public. And if somebody usually wants more information, we can, provide any documents that they're looking for related to that. Overall permit volume.
Sorry, Steve, excuse me, it's Tom Livingston. Just, is that document publicly available? And
Yeah.
is it a lot?
That
So we-
map is on the website.
Okay, and it's constantly updated?
Constantly, as in like probably every quarter.
Okay, it's really helpful. Thank you.
Sure. I'd say overall volume of activity, we're probably about, just on average, 2/3 to 3/4 what we were a year ago, related to, and I think that's obviously related to economic slowdown and the pandemic and those kind of things. The interesting thing is that the commission level activity is probably as busy or busier than it's been in the last few years. So there's a lot of significant applications in front of the zoning commission at the moment. A lot of those have been in the paper. So you have the Norton Place application, Wall Street Place, the Pinnacle, North 7's been a little quiet, but that's still there. And there's several other medium to small applications, and we're constantly fielding calls and getting requests for information about property and things that are going on. So even though it's slower than it was a year ago, it was really busy a year ago in terms of the overall permitting. So even though it's off, I'd say it's not like slow where I would be a level that I'm concerned about. So that's kind of the big picture where the overall development schemes are at the moment. We did pass as you know, the East Norwalk TOD plan back a couple of months ago in the fall. The next step out of that was to take another look at the parking calculations and the amenity calculations that are provided within the document. And how we staged that was to have the consultant that was going to undertake the zoning regulations rewrite to take that task on. We have picked a consultant to do that work. We're kind of at the very beginning of the contract stage right now. I hope to be back in front of you next month to talk about the firm and go over the scope of work and the timeline and what's expected of them. So we're moving on those initiatives that we started. The other project that's fairly significant that's being done right now is a study of the city's industrial zones. And I know Mr. Kites and Ms. Young both participate in that group. You may have gotten an email this afternoon from me about a survey that we're working on. I just started putting it out there today, and we're reaching out through all the channels that we can think of in terms of folks who may have access to members of the public to get as much input as possible. The survey is a little different, and I'm not going to do it justice, and maybe Sabrina can explain it better than me if she recalls that the format that they're using, it's meant to be an interactive process. So as the answers and responses are received, that it's kind of an ongoing dialogue. So it's not just the typical survey that you would see where somebody asks a question and then there's 80 responses in this direction and another 10 in this one. It's kind of meant to be an ongoing dialogue, so you can check back in and see what people's responses are, and it's meant to guide a discussion and inform the group that's looking at the study as well as the consultant team on what people are thinking about these issues. So it's meant to trigger responses related to items, not just necessarily provide static data. So we'll be working on pushing that out over the next couple of weeks or so, getting feedback. The consultant team has also been conducting interviews with stakeholders in the area, whether they're property owners, people that live in the area, business entities, on what they see in terms of industrial growth, the challenges, the opportunities, issues with land use regulations, issues they may have with the city, how the city could help more. So they're working on those interviews now, and we'll continue those over the next couple of weeks. Once that phase is done, the next couple of phases are we start working on a broader public meeting that we'll have. And they'll also start talking to some other stakeholder groups like the Harbor Management Commission, the redevelopment agency and other groups to try to get their take and their sense of things. And that's all going to be occurring while we're starting the rewrite of the zoning regulations. So the outcomes from that study will feed right into the broader zoning analysis that we're going to do over the next 18 months. that was really quick, long-winded kind of snapshot of where things are at.
Where's Tom Rich's project on Water Street? How's that going?
I was out there a couple of months ago and I've had communications electronically since then. They've indicated they're hoping to be done with some of the units pretty soon. Trying to close up as much as they can in this calendar year and then wrap it up first quarter of 2021.
Okay, and I see quite a bit of activity in the back over there on Westport Avenue. I knew it was coming, but just to see the scale of it, of all the residential units, behind Westport Ave and Wolf Pit. I don't know if you're familiar with that project, Steve.
Westport Ave.
I came before you. I mean, it's pre-COVID, but
It's
I just want like an update. Like, I'm sorry.
It's on Willard, right behind Petco.
Yes, Willard.
No, I haven't been down there. I'm glad you told me. I didn't realize that they were that far along, so I'll have to go by and take a look.
Yeah, how many units were back there? Can you refresh my memory?
I can let me share my screen if that's okay. If I can do that, then I can tell you.
Yeah, Steve, let me stop sharing. And then you should be able to.
All right. Give me 1 sec.
Thanks, Steve. I mean, if you see it from the street, I mean, it looks like the Grand Canyon's being built right behind CVS.
Yeah, I agree, John. I drive by there often.
Yeah, it's
Wow.
It should be on the map. Let me know if that pops up. There we go. Can you guys all see that?
Mhm.
Yep.
That is the wrong project. That's a brewery, if anybody's interested in that one, but that's not the one you're looking for.
That's the one.
Let me zoom in a little bit because it's picking up 3 of them. All right, that's it right there.
119 dwellings.
Yeah, 119. So there's 2 buildings they're actually constructing. So there's 219, but there's a residential back building, and in front of that there's going to be a storage facility. So there's actually two separate structures on the property. It's a pretty large site. If I recall, I think it's at like 7 acres. There was a kind of a neat thing that came out of that. Unfortunately, this doesn't allow me to pull up the aerial picture on this map, but there's a large, off of Strawberry Hill Avenue, they actually had frontage and access to their property off of Strawberry Hill. And as a trade-off with the commission allowed them to change the zone to pick up a little more density, but in exchange, they put I guess if you're looking at from the site, Strawberry Hill Avenue into the rear, so that's the west and to the north, they put all that land into conservation easement, and they were going to remove all the invasive species that were in there and make it look nicer. But it would what they could have done was they could have built townhouses along Strawberry Hill Avenue, and I think they only picked up like between 5 and 10 residential units. So they gained a little bit of density, but I think it kind of gave a little bit of shield to the neighbors on the condos on the other side of Strawberry Hill, and also the neighbors in the condos to the rear by preserving all that land. And there are some wetlands, and there's a small water course that runs at the back of that property.
Steve, is this the project that's largely 1-bedroom apartment?
They're 1 and 2. There's some 2 and some studios. There's a mix. I don't know if it breaks it down that finite on there. I don't think it did. No, sorry. On the site, I think we have that, but I don't think it breaks it down that finite.
Thanks, Steve. I don't know if you touched on this. Apologize if you did, but the zoning updates for the East Norwalk TOD.
Yeah, so that the next phase was the review of the parking and the amenities. And I know when I spoke with you last fall about getting the approval, that emphasizing the green infrastructure, not so much as an amenity, but as more as a requirement. So that's the next step. So once we get the zoning consultant on the books, they'll start doing their review of the parking and of the amenities. I've already spoken to them kind of briefly about that, just how we want to proceed. And I'm hoping that will happen realistically, hopefully in January, February timeframe. So once that's done, we'll tweak the draft zoning that was an appendix to the plan and then put that out for public comment.
So you see it going before zoning, March or April would be a pretty good
Yeah, I think
guesstimate.
I would expect that they'll kick off the formal application hearing process, maybe as early as late February. It's possible.
Mr. Keegan, I see your hand up.
Yeah, hi, thank you. Steve, I just have a question related to Norton Place. We're going about the industrial zone study. So would it be a good idea, or could we maybe halt the discussions on that distribution center until we get more information from the neighborhood, the stakeholders, et cetera?
So we couldn't prevent them. So what we did do before the industrial zone study started, we put a moratorium on contractor yards because that was a big concern going back several years. So any new contractor yards couldn't submit an application or go forward until the moratorium was lifted or the regulations were amended. We did not do that for warehousing or distribution facilities, and we did not put a broad moratorium on any projects or developments in the industrial zones. I mean, we could have, I don't know if we would have gone that far, but at this stage, they've already submitted their application. So any regulation amendment we put in related to that wouldn't apply to that application.
And just to remind the committee that I believe I know that's coming before zoning as far as the public hearing is concerned. What is it, Steve, Monday at 6 p.m.?
Correct. Yep.
So I know it's right before caucus, but if you guys want to chime in, I believe it's on the website, Steve. You just search zoning meetings and the Zoom link and all that's there.
Yeah, it'll be on the city. I think right now, if you go on the city calendar, you can click on the link for that and it pops up.
Would you mind sending the council as a whole that link?
Sure.
I appreciate it. I plan to speak at that meeting. Okay, anybody else have any questions for Steve? Anything else going on around Norwalk you want to talk about? Things we've done, things on the radar?
The only other thing, and I don't know if we ever touched on it because it kind of got wrapped into other things, we did get bronze certification for sustainable CT. And I know that was an initiative that the planning committee was directly involved with and took the lead on, probably going back at least 18 months now. So we did get that certification maybe a month or so ago. And we started reshuffling a little bit of our staff after the city buyouts. So I anticipate at some point we'll sit down and start looking at silver accreditation. I think we did a quick little accounting and we have a decent start. I don't know if we're quite ready to submit for that level yet, but we'll identify initiatives where we think we can score points and pick up additional points, and we'll start working on that over the next year.
Great. Real quick, Steve, the Wall Street project, I believe that's going before zoning. Is it in December or is it after the new year?
Yeah, so we've already had one hearing on that application. There's a second hearing is next Wednesday night, at which point I think they'll close the hearing. And then they more than likely will be waiting for, it also has to go to the redevelopment agency for final look at the design. My staff, as well as redevelopment staff, has been working with our peer review architect in conjunction with the architect for the applicant very closely on design changes. And I think a lot of subtle changes, but it already looks better than probably the version that you guys saw. So they'll reveal more of those changes on next Wednesday night. So it's been a pretty good process, a little bit of tug of war at times and pushback, but I think we're moving it in the right direction.
So you're saying there's a public hearing and they may take action and call for a vote at the next planning and the zoning meeting?
Yeah, so I anticipate a vote at their, I think they meet January 7th because they meet the 7th, the 9th, and the 15th. And they're not going to meet again before the holidays. So they'll vote January 7th, I think.
Right.
Steve, will those design changes be available publicly?
Yeah, everything that's been done to date is up on, I can send you the link.
Yeah, I'd appreciate it. Thanks.
Yeah, all the we're kind of, COVID kind of pushed us in this direction. Probably the public was asking us to do this a while ago. And we probably should have done it earlier, was putting all the application materials online. We're gonna fix the format because it's a little clunkier than I would like right now, but we're putting you can go on and look at all the plans, all the written submittals, everything available on that project is online. So you can go and look everything you want to take a look at.
Steve, the Spinnaker projects in East Norwalk, I see quite a bit of activity down there. Where is that where is that in the process? So
My last conversation with them, so the older, the existing building that they transformed or my brain's not working tonight, that they fixed up.
Cooch Hotel.
They that building, I believe, is done inside, and I believe they have all the commercial space is leased up from the last that I talked with them. So I think that's really good news, and that there was over 40,000 square feet of commercial space in there, if I'm remembering correctly. I could probably pull it back up on the map. So they do have that leased. I don't know how far away they are on the second building to the back. I haven't been by there in probably 2 weeks. They were still working on the outside of it the last time I went by, but that's moving along well. I think when I talked to them, and I've talked to, also the folks up at BLT that are up at Glover Avenue, all their units are leasing up really well. There's not a big vacancy rate. So I think that's also a good sign. We're not seeing a lag on the multifamily like we had a little bit of concern about that.
Have you seen anything that has caused concern as far as the commercial real estate market? So maybe, specifically like Merit 7 buildings or any commercial property on Connecticut Ave? I mean, you got any feedback from anyone? Sabrina, you want to chime in too?
Yeah, Sabrina's probably got more up-to-date information. I can speak to, I have talked to David Waters from BLT and they're in front of the commission, and I ask them offline all the time, how's it going? I think that a lot of it is wait and see till after the businesses start coming back. I think there's definitely going to be a trend towards hybrid, working from home, working from office. What had been happening up at a lot of the tenants up there, with FactSet and Datto, they had actually been adding employees, but consolidating space. So they were, trying to work in tighter quarters, but now we're from an office leasing standpoint, we're hopeful that maybe they'll, obviously retain or increase employees, but add space back to spread people out some more. But I don't know if anybody has a firm answer on that. But Sabrina's probably got more up-to-date information than I have.
Yeah, I mean, the information that you shared, Steve, is kind of what I'm hearing around the market too. You have kind of two sides of the coin. You have the one half who's completely, transformed into working from home, but then you have the other half that has done the opposite, where they're now spacing and need more space than they currently have, which is good news that they're going to be leasing up more space. And it's funny when I talk to some of the business owners that are in those types of buildings, they saw all of their employees come back when everybody had the power outage from the storm. So people don't think about, when you have a big snowstorm or a power outage, when working from home doesn't necessarily work out all the time. You have to have a backup option. So a lot of them have been rotating schedule now to make sure that people can still come in when they want to in a safe way, distance. And like Steve said, it was an interesting time when COVID hit, because a lot of the Merit 7 folks and the larger tenants were doing this hoteling model where you're stuffing more people into smaller spaces and you have a lot more shared conference rooms and things like that when you have meetings. But now we're doing the exact opposite of that, which is stay away from me as much as possible and keep that distance. So like I said, because of the way the lease agreements fell, we won't really see those effects until, people start coming back. Hopefully, in January was when the original date was, but with the numbers now, who knows if that date's still going to hold or if it's going to be pushed back. And then that's when we'll really see, how many of those employees are actually going to be physically back in the office, how many are working from home some days and coming in other days, and who's just completely remote. I've seen that a lot of smaller firms, not in these larger Merit 7 buildings, but the smaller firms are transitioning more to work from home. However, we're getting a lot of interest and attraction from satellite offices from larger cities like New York City, the Boston area, things like that. So they're infilling back into those smaller spaces that we have available, which is good news for us as well, because the companies that are working from home are still quote unquote in Norwalk, even though they don't have a physical space. And the spaces that we have are getting attraction from companies like Scholastic and these larger names that we didn't have before. So now we're getting kind of double the amount of companies with larger names from different areas, as well as not losing any of that job retention that we had back in Norwalk. So
How do we track occupancy percentages, Sabrina? Like, do we rely on the property owners to supply us that data? Is it tapped into some real estate equation? Or
I usually, for the larger buildings, it's really hard to get in touch with specific companies, especially now. So I've been relying on the real estate data information that I can get from people like Choice Peterson and other, larger real estate firms that can provide that information to me. When it comes to the smaller spaces, when you're talking about, 1,000 to 5,000 square feet, I usually contact the landlord to see if there's space available, because not only am I getting interest from companies that want to move into Norwalk all the time, but it's good for me to have that information in case somebody calls where I can say, these spaces are available for you. Here's the property owners. Feel free to connect with them at your own pace, or if you'd like me to make an introduction. So I keep kind of a log of myself when they're on the smaller scale. And like I said, the larger scale, it's really mainly real estate data. And the real estate data is actually really great because you can also know when something is expiring soon. So if somebody's lease is going to be up soon, so I can take their contact information and hound them so that they stay. And it also gives opportunity for companies that are planning to expand elsewhere or expand in Norwalk, where they're going to different space, so that I know that that space is going to become available and I can infill it as quickly as possible.
I know it's like we do a pretty good job at having an accurate accurate count on the residential side as far as percentages. Just seems we were always lacking a little bit, and I get it. It's difficult with the more of the commercial properties. Anyway, anybody on the committee else have any questions for Sabrina or Steve? Ms. Smith?
Thank you, Guides. Steve, thanks so much for this update. It's really, really helpful. And the map is great. Where specifically on the website can constituents find the interactive map?
Sure. Would it be easier if I just send you the link directly at?
Sure. Yeah, that'd be great. And then
we're actually redoing our website, and the P&Z one specifically is a little clunky, and so somebody's actually trying to make it a little more user friendly as we speak. So yeah, I'll send you the link.
Okay, great. And then my question specifically is on that Main Avenue property, otherwise known as the BJ site. What's the status of that? Whether or not it's a BJ site?
Yeah.
But yeah, what's the status of that property?
They're still planning on going forward. They were a couple, 6-8 weeks ago, they were pretty active on asking questions about, getting things done. I don't know if they have a hold up still with the state of Connecticut on their traffic issues. I know there was a turn lane that had to go in and new lights and stuff. So I don't know if they got all that cleared up, but I haven't heard anything recently. There were a couple other large retail projects that were poking around a while ago, and I think some of them are they put the pause button on for a little bit to see how things shake out. So, and a couple of them indicated to me that they'll know a little more in December about what their plans are going forward.
Okay. Thank you.
Steve, I just lost my train of thought. Until I get it back. Anyone else have any questions? Mr. Huvelman?
Yeah, thank you, Chairman Kites. Just really want to say, going back to that survey, the industrial zone survey, I got that today and I did it, and I love that format. It's very cool, very interesting the way it'll build on itself. So kudos to you guys. I think that's going to be a really good tool. So that's all I wanted to say.
I think if you get to meet the consultants, you're going to like them. They're a little different than most of the consultants we deal with. We kind of sometimes they're off, like we'll have a conversation and they're amongst themselves, like they're already on to 5 other things in the middle of the conversation, but they're really into the work that they do. So I think that shows with the meetings. And I think that they're going to, when we get to the public, the really, the stages of the project when there are a lot of public interaction, I think you're going to like the way they deal with the public and how they present the materials and how they interact. I think it'll go over pretty well.
Well, just that survey alone is just interesting because of the way it is interactive in that sense, and the way that you can feel that you're a part of it as opposed to here answer a bunch of questions. So I like that format a lot. That's good news.
Steve, or Sabrina, have you heard of any projects that were given the go-ahead, have been going through the approval process, and then backed out due to COVID?
No, I haven't heard anything.
No?
I've been getting a ton of inquiries about different projects. I don't think anybody's committed to anything yet, but everybody still that I talk to are still positive about things going forward. That doesn't mean that there's going to be a rush, but I know like BLT is still very optimistic and is still pursuing their large project up there. I'm no economist and can't predict what's going to happen 6 months from now, but I think the people that I talk to are optimistic and still see good things going forward.
Okay, so didn't see any big projects pull the plug because of COVID.
I have not.
That's interesting. As I know, our rental market was through the roof prior to COVID, and I'm my other hat I wear. I do a lot of work in residential homes and so forth, and I know that market's just going through the roof. So you would think that a lot of folks would try to take advantage of that by developing to the needs of the community. So who knows what we'll see in the coming months. Anyway, that being said, any other questions for Steve or Sabrina? No? Okay, let's move on. Thank you, Steve, and appreciate your time.
Okay, have a good night.
Thanks, Steve.
Bye-bye.
So the next item up is old business. Nothing to vote on under new business. An update on the Wall Street West Avenue Enterprise Zone approval. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much, everybody. So I just wanted to circle back with the group. The last time that the Enterprise Zone was in front of the Planning Committee specifically was probably 6 months to 8 months ago at this point, because after you guys gave us the go ahead, we moved it on to ordinance, and with the help of Lisa and Tom and Brian McCann, we really went through and revived that whole ordinance, and then got that approved by ordinance. And then after that, legal sent it to the state for its approval. The state then responded to us that the enterprise zone is eligible, number one, and that they are going to approve it, but we needed to provide some additional information, mainly Mylar map copies. So DPW is currently working on making those Mylar maps and sending them to the state via snail mail. And then once that happens, they sign those maps, we get a copy, and that's when it's quote unquote officially the enterprise zone finally. And in addition to that, I wanted to give you an update on the TIF stuff as well, because I know we talked about both of those things simultaneously. And it was agreed upon by you folks as well that the enterprise zone would be our first course of action, and then we would tackle the TIF at a later date. I had requested in my capital budget the ability to hire a consultant to do that TIF financial plan that we were all speaking about. You guys gracefully approved that for me. So we are starting the RFP process currently. We have a draft ready. It's cycling through planning and zoning with Steve and through Brian with redevelopment before that's released. And then it'll be the normal RFP process that I'm sure you guys are all familiar with at this point, where there'll be folks of council as well as staff that will vet the various applicants and will pick the best one, and then they'll go forward with that. The good thing about COVID is that we've actually gotten a lot more public participation than we're used to on a lot of our meetings. So I'm hopeful that the outcome of that plan will also prove that as well, so that we really get a document that we're all looking for and that we're all, you know, we all believe in and we're hopeful for. So I'm looking forward to that. And that's about it on that front. If you guys have any questions on either of those things, I'm happy to address.
Well, Sabrina, have people, any developers reached out, excuse me, to you or Jessica in regards to the enterprise zone showing interest after its final approval?
Yep. So since it's not final approved yet, they obviously heard about it in the press originally. And after it was announced that it passed through council, I've personally gotten 2 inquiries on that from developers, more actually on the small scale rather than the large scale, which is interesting because normally the enterprise zone projects are larger in scale. So you get a big bang for your buck compared to kind of the small scale stuff. So I had 2 inquiries thus far. There's probably another one where Descala might come in and use it. Who knows, since we had that proposal on the table a while back, but I'm not sure what's going on with that.
Can you refresh the committee's memory on the approval process?
Sure.
So how it will work?
Yeah, so there's 2 paths for the enterprise zone. That one is for businesses specifically. So if you are a manufacturing business or a warehouse distribution type of business, it's mainly in support of manufacturing type businesses though. If you have one of those folks as your tenant, the business can then certify with the state and they would actually get state tax breaks, and any improvements that are done to the property to support your tenant, like a commercial fit up permit or something like that, would then get the local tax break from us, but then it's supposed to work as a pass through to the tenant itself for cheaper rent because they are located in an enterprise zone. So that's the first kind of job growth pathway, which the enterprise zone is half meant for. And then the other half is just the property tax exemption. So if you're developing a property, say you had, a blank slate of land, you then decide to build, 100 apartments on it. You would then ask me for a certification letter if you are in the enterprise zone boundary or not. If you are in the boundary, I provide you with that certification letter, and then it then gets provided to the tax assessor's office and they apply the abatement at the normal schedule for the 7 years. But that does not apply until you get your final CO. So you're paying taxes all through construction, which are always going up considering you're improving the land if you're starting with a blank slate. And then after that hits, you pay for your land value taxes, but you don't pay for your property, like what's now on your site. But then that scales up like on the 100, 70, 60, 50, 40, and through the 7 years, where you're eventually at your amount that you would pay, and the tax assessor just applies that every year. And then there's the third option, which again is for property developers, which the council would have to approve if there's a project that the council's really interested in. We can approve a special schedule. It still can only be for 7 years, but say it's something like a college, for example, that we really wanted to see downtown. If you guys wanted to give them a break on their construction for their property taxes, we can do, for example, a 7-year 50% abatement, or we can backload it and do, the abatement, the smaller abatement later in the year. So it's 20 in the beginning or 50 or however you want that to happen. So now we have the option to do that in the specific zones as well. But that again requires a lengthier process and approval and interest from you guys, which we can't just do kind of on a back end staff level. Of course, we look at the viability of the project before we present it to you, but it's obviously in your court if that was something that we wanted to pursue.
Okay, so you mentioned snail mail. When do you, I'm sorry if you said it, but when do you think this will have the state's seal of approval and ready to go?
So the maps got done this week and were sent off. So, a week or two, and then they send me the letter. They've been obviously more swamped than all of us at the city level have been, considering all the stuff with COVID. And their folks are working on COVID stuff, enterprise zone stuff, opportunity zone stuff, all of this all at once. So it's been a little bit delayed. But I would say by the end of the month, probably beginning of next year, pending the holiday schedule, maybe mid-January, we'd be fully checked and sealed, because they've already done their review, which is normally the lengthy part. Now they just need the small pieces that attach to the final approval.
That's why I always tell the committee, if you have an initiative, start it, because man, things
It
take
takes
a
a while.
long time. We started working on this, and I had brown hair, So anyway, any
I
other
just want to
questions?
ask Sabrina,
regards
it does
to-
anything, oh, I'm sorry,
Go
John.
ahead.
I
Go
just
ahead,
want to
Lisa.
say, is there any other process we need to do through ordinance or anything else? Are we all done with the committee level? So you just stamped it, it's done.
Yep, it's all done. They just need those maps from us, and then I provide them with the approval that y'all all gave. So that's the final check, and then the commissioner signs off on it, and it's officially ratified. So
Anybody else? No. Okay. Hopefully this does what we wanted it to do. I don't mean to throw you a curveball, but just one last question is, how's the mall doing?
So the mall is actually doing great. The holiday season, they're actually seeing some traffic, which is great. They've really followed the social distancing guidelines better than a lot of others that I've seen. They're really, they have their security really enforcing masks. They have, their larger, more attractive tenants like Apple and Amazon really enforcing distancing in lines and making sure people have appointments. They're really ramping up right now for the holiday season. You can still go see Santa and take your picture. They're just in like a snow globe, so you have that little fun experience there. So they're really getting ready for the shopping season and making sure everybody's feeling safe. I was actually on the phone with Matt a few weeks ago about possibly getting a tent permit for the Pinstripes for outdoor dining. So they should be proceeding on that front as well. So, doing as best as they can like everybody else, but I'm happy that they're still getting traffic and that their major anchor tenants are still, doing well, even though some of them have changed their models to mainly being in-store pickup or curbside pickup. But they really adapted really well to the circumstances. Of course, as we all know, it was super poor timing. They opened in October, and then, March came, and here we all are still in quarantine. So, but they've really came out on top, and they're doing a really great job with supporting us, with whether it be getting messages out and, posting thank yous to the teachers and thank yous to the nurses on their billboard, things like that. They've really been supportive of us, and we're grateful for them, and I'm glad they're doing well.
How about their restaurants? I know they allocated a significant amount of square footage for them. I know there's a couple there, not to mention names, but large restaurants that were planning to open. Are they still moving forward?
Yep, they're still moving forward. I believe that Yard House is opening in January.
Oh, okay.
And they're still proceeding with that timeline. I'm not sure if it might get delayed considering the numbers as of right now, but their permits are fully executed and done, and they're ready. They're just, ready and waiting, as I feel like we all are at this point. But yeah, when I spoke with Matt, we're all good on that front. And the restaurants that are there, they're obviously trying to utilize, as much distancing as possible, number one, and number two, possibly utilizing outdoor options as feasible. So,
Hey, Sabrina,
Yeah,
do you know what I'm sorry, go ahead. Yeah, do you know what the lease rate is right now in terms of where they are?
I would have to get that from Matt. I'm not sure of the lease numbers as of right now. I can ask and get back to you on that, though.
Yeah, okay. I'm wondering also, Lily in August, I don't think it's moved in yet, right?
Their signage is up. I'm not sure if they're physically opened yet. The last time I was there was probably a month and a half ago, and they still had the boarding up that said coming soon. So I don't think they've opened yet, no.
Anyway, I'm a bit curious if you can get the information. Thank you.
Yeah, for sure.
That's good news. Like, like I said, I mean, Yard House, I mean, it's pretty much the entire ground floor. And,
Yeah.
you know how rumors circulate, but I'm glad to hear that they're moving forward. Okay. Any other questions regards to anything going on? No? Okay. Oh, Lisa?
Yeah, while we have Sabrina and we're talking about dining, any movement on the outdoor dining regulations that you're thinking about or need to move forward?
Not quite yet. I'm still ironing out that with the other departments, mainly because we have to start thinking about what we want to do in a permanent situation with the barriers, when we have to move them, if we're moving them, how we deal with snow removal, who's going to get tents, who's not going to get tents. So we just ironed out that winter regulation tent process. And we're kind of waiting for the applicants to submit on that front so that we can kind of understand what our circumstances and requirements are going to be, but that's definitely going to move forward in some way, shape, and form. We're just kind of at the time where we're still trying to test the waters when winter comes, what's going to happen. But then after that, that's really something that has to be interdepartmental, which is why it's taking so long to really come back to ordinance, because it involves, 6 different departments in the mayor's office. So we really just have to make sure that from the ordinance standpoint that we're all in agreement that this is the way we want to go and what they specifically need for each of them, so that we're not looped into something that can be executed. So.
Barbara?
Yeah, I just have a question about the tents. So if a restaurant has a full tent up, that's considered indoor dining, isn't it? And so that functions at 50%.
Mm-hmm. If you have any more than 2 sides down, it functions as indoor. So it's 50% capacity. Yeah.
Barbara, I don't mean to cut him. Darlene just texted me, says she's on, but not as a member. I don't know if you see her.
I can add her in. I believe she should be in soon.
I'm sorry, Barbara.
No, it's okay. It's just something I've wondered about because, I'm very careful about dining, and it does seem like a lot of the restaurants are choosing a full tent. So that's considered indoor.
Yep.
Yeah.
And then they're supposed to have as much ventilation as possible, even if it's all enclosed. So you have to open the door and let it air out every hour or so. There's certain regulations that the state put in place if you are going to have all 4 sides down as well.
Thank you.
Yep.
I'll let the record show Darlene Young has joined us.
Sorry, I was so
Darlene?
late. I was at another meeting. It wasn't supposed to go that long. I'm sorry.
No, it's nice to see you. You got any questions, Darlene? We're about to wrap it up.
Meeting adjourned?
Motion, is it really quick? Anyone, any other questions? No? Tom, you have your hands up? Nope. Okay. All right. Thank you all. Hopefully we learned something tonight, and do you have a motion to adjourn? Darlene Young, thank you. Have a good night, everybody.
Good night, everyone.